I've been walking these streets for 25 years, pounding the pavements. I know what's going on in the back rooms. I know what's going on in the boardrooms. What's the Deal is the place where the purple people hang out. We're the only show on television that allows a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent to come down and talk it out. The #1 show on television that always focuses on crypto. We tell you what's the real deal.
These guys were killers, including the FBI agents. They weren't treating me with kid gloves at all.
Marlon Brando was my acting teacher. Frank Sinatra was my singing teacher. And Marilyn Monroe made me a man.
Wow. Welcome to this week's edition of What's the Deal? I'm John Tabacco. This week, we have an action-packed show for you. We have someone right at the heart of the Mueller probe, where there's now no collusion. George Papadopoulos joins us tonight. Also, we have Gianni Russo. Gianni Russo is the Hollywood Godfather, and his new book, Hollywood Godfather, talks about an array of things that you just won't believe. We have our legal eagles, we have our politics panel from the left, right, and center. All this and more coming up right now. Joining us on What's the Deal, it's George Papadopoulos. George, thanks for joining us. He's a former advisor to President Trump. You've probably heard of him before. He was one of the first men that got dragged in by Mueller's angry Democrats. And right now, he's the author of Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down Donald Trump. How does a guy like you, who's made a career of being respectable in the business world and the politics world, get dragged into the Mueller probe?
That's a great question. You know, by the time I actually got involved with the Trump campaign, we now figured out by Devin Nunes recently that there was an active investigation, whatever that even means, into the Trump campaign by late 2015, early 2016. I joined the campaign in March 2016. So by the time I'm even involved, we're all in the middle of some sort of crosshairs by Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, some of these other corrupt government officials under Obama. So by the time I get there, they're throwing various assets at me. This guy, this professor, Joseph Mifsud, who I talk about a lot in the book, who's at the center of my case and the center of what was once known as the fake collusion narrative.
That's right.
They're throwing these diplomats from Australia to record conversations with me, this Alexander Downer character. They're bringing FBI informants disguised as Cambridge professors who are also linked to the British to give me $3,000, and then they come and try and make me slip up and say something that doesn't exist.
James Comey has admitted that he leaked to this professor some of the information that was going on, and they were using this professor as a proxy asset to come after you. Now, someone comes to you with $3,000 in cash and says what? What does a spy who's trying to entrap someone say?
I'll tell you, it's a crazy, wild story. So it's a September 2016. This is the time when the FBI is trying to get FISA warrants on everybody. And I get an email from this guy, and he's like, I'm a Cambridge professor. I used to work for Reagan and some other guys. I'm going to pay you $3,000. I just want you to come out here and talk to me about the energy business, because that's what I used to do in my profession. And you know, you come here, it's going to be a 3-day trip, and you go on your way, and I support Trump kind of thing. I fly to London. All of a sudden, things are starting to get very bizarre. He's introducing me to this honeypot, this young girl, you know, very flirty. She's talking about Russia to me. She's trying to basically suggest to me that if I give her some stuff on Russia, she's going to sleep with me. I mean, it was a very strange situation.
The missus probably didn't like this coming out.
Luckily, I wasn't married at the time. You know? I wasn't married to the beautiful woman I am now. But you know, but even still, I was thinking I'm there on a business thing. This is Cambridge University, apparently. This isn't how things happen. So then I'm like, all right, that's just bizarre. Let me go talk to the professor the next day after she vetted me or whatever was going on. And then all of a sudden, he starts bringing his phone out, putting it out in front of him, and starts asking me strange questions about Russian hacking and open-ended questions.
And anybody who's worth his salt in street sense is saying, this guy's wearing a wire.
My first instinct's like, all right, first the honeypot. Now something's not adding up here. Right. This guy was wearing a wire. He was trying to get various guys in the Trump world to slip up with fake information that he was trying to insert in the conversation in order to get further warrants to spy on Trump himself.
So, tell me about this first call with Sam Clovis, where you supposedly discussed Russia.
Yeah. So part of that conversation was basically like, we like your stuff in the energy world. I had a lot of ties to Israel. Sam Clovis says, but just so you know, Trump wants to work with Russia at some level. So we're trying to figure out how to do that, and if you're a foreign policy advisor, just get ready for that. And I said, all right, that's fine. I mean, it's not a crime to have a relationship with Russia, even if you're a president. It's not a crime to actually sit down and meet a president of Russia as a candidate.
Was your involvement with Sam Clovis picked up on a FISA at that time? Is that how they zeroed in on you?
I was under surveillance before joining the Trump campaign and while I was working on the Trump campaign with a FISA warrant on me. The whole thing was a conducted, pre-planned sabotage effort using the FBI, the full authority of the U.S. intelligence apparatus, and foreign countries, as I explained in my book, the British, the Australians, and even some in Italy, who were working in tandem to make this fake scenario happen so that we would be where we were up until 3 days ago, where the president's in limbo, his presidency might be questioned,
right,
and all of his associates would be going to jail like I did, or might be going to jail, and there might be further penalties.
Tell us how the FBI comes to grab you.
So I'm in Italy and I'm in Greece. I'm enjoying a beautiful vacation with my then girlfriend, now wife. I'm flying back to New York, or to DC, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at 2 agents on the shuttle bus that I'm on staring at me after like a 15-hour flight. And I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on. Are these guys gonna question me, or they're just here looking out for other people? I'm putting my passport in the kiosk and I get a badge in front of me. This is the FBI, come with us. I get 2 agents that bring me into this room. He's like, this is where we take the president when he lands at Dulles. And I see the same agents who interviewed me in Chicago. They're looking through my bags. They tell me you're under arrest. I'm handcuffed, I got shackles put on me. I'm thrown into this black SUV with tinted windows, taken to this undisclosed location. I'm asking them.
Took your phone.
Took my
no
phone.
I'm telling them.
I'm telling them
with the outside world, almost like a kidnapping.
It was like a kidnapping. So then I'm sent to this detention center. They handcuff my hand to a wall. They're giving me snacks. Let's just get this show on the road right now. We got everything against you. We don't need lawyers involved. And I tell them, what are you talking about? Go get my lawyers right now.
Yeah. So how long are you in detention before you're allowed to contact your attorney?
I was in probably for 2 hours.
2 hours.
But then it's even worse. After that, they take me to the jail. They throw me into the cell like an animal with 2 guys. I don't even know what I'm charged with, why I'm even being arrested. You gotta understand what's going through my head at that moment. The next day I'm brought in front of a magistrate and they're telling me you're looking at 25 years in prison on charges I had no idea what they were even about.
What are the crimes they're alleging at that time that you were gonna serve 25 years for?
The first 2 were lying to the FBI and obstruction of justice. And at the very end, they told me I was looking at a FARA violation, which is the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which no one gets prosecuted for, okay, especially one that they were saying I was involved with, which is Israelis. And the same thing they got Michael Flynn with, the same thing they got Paul Manafort with as well. So I should have known by the way they were coming after me with these strange crimes or whatever they were trying to invent, they were going to go after other guys in Trump's world with too. These guys were killers, you know. These weren't, including the FBI agents that were dealing with me, they weren't treating me with kid gloves at all. Not only did they go after me, they were going after my then girlfriend and now wife. They issued her a subpoena too to try and make her either leave me or terrify her, or to try and make her get involved in some sort of crime with me, you know. So not only did they go after me, they went after my family.
In your book, you talk about how you didn't lie, but yet you pled guilty to a lie. Jerome Corsi was also issued a plea where they wanted to plead guilty to lying when they couldn't even charge the crime. So do you think the government knowingly let you plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit?
I'm 100% convinced of that. And that's why actually months before I was even going to jail, I was fighting back. I was trying to withdraw from my guilty plea, but my lawyers were basically telling me, let's try and do it, but it's so hard. I don't know if we can even get you out of it, even though we later found out, much too late, that all this was a complete hoax, a setup, and false evidence was used against me, and my story was completely mischaracterized to the world to make it seem like I was doing something wrong when I wasn't. Robert Mueller designed my entire case to be a lie. It was a lie. Every single thing about how my case and who George Papadopoulos was portrayed to the world by Mueller and the FBI was a lie.
You actually got sentenced to 14 days, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How much did you serve your time?
Yeah, I did 11 days in there, and you know what? One of the best things about that experience shows me how important it is to fight back in your life. Because when I went in there, they saw me fight. The prisoners in there saw me fighting back. and trying to withdraw my plea agreement. And I got in there. I got treated like gold in there because they said, you know what, you did 2 things. You didn't rat.
Where'd you go?
I was in Oxford, Wisconsin at this satellite camp over there that was kind of like a dormitory thing. It wasn't even a jail, to be honest.
What has this done to your reputation?
Fortunately, since my then girlfriend, now wife, was going on TV fighting for me, giving some small hints about who George Papadopoulos really is, and people started to question some stuff, like 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 in Papadopoulos' story. He's never been to Russia, but he's the ground guy, the patient zero for a Russia conspiracy. Like I state in my book, this was a deep state operation targeted at Trump, targeted at Trump's guys in order to make it look like he was colluding, doing wrong things, and to hurt his presidency. But since that's been debunked now, my book right now becomes very important to read, and that's why Congress has invited me to testify. I believe that's also why they released my congressional testimony the day of my book release, to amplify what's in here and to tell the world that this is the new info that we're looking into. And most of it has to do with the FBI under Obama.
George, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, John.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this with Gianni Russo. Welcome back. Wow. Every time we think we've hit the highest of highs on What's the Deal, we just go to the next level, because that's what we do. We try to bring you the people that know where the rubber meets the road. And tonight, we're talking to a legend. We've never had a legend on this show before, but Gianni Russo joins us tonight. Thank you so much, Gianni, for being here with us on What's the Deal.
I appreciate it.
To me, you're a legend. I mean,
Thank you.
Met
That's a great status. I
we've
appreciate
met many times in the past, and it's an honor for me to have you on my show in the spotlight.
Anytime you want me, you get stuck for a guest, I'll be right here.
Well, how about come whenever you want,
Okay.
and if I'm not stuck for a guest, I'll still put you in the lead-off slot.
Please.
The big rumor that I wanted to hit you with first, because Staten Island gets a bum rap sometimes, but from what I hear, you're a Staten Islander.
I spent a lot of time on Staten Island, many, many years. But I mean, when you talk about Staten Island, that's the roots, that's typical Italian Americans. You know, my grandmother, my grandfather, my uncles. In fact, on Amity Place in Rosebank, we still have the shrine that my grandfather built, a Lady of Mount Carmel. He built every stone, and he said he'd build this if all his sons came back from the Second World War. So I did so many things on Staten Island. Some things I could talk about, some things I can't.
Oh, well, let's not get into that on What's the Deal. What was your life like prior to Carlo and The Godfather and filming on Staten Island? What was your life like before that?
Well, I had a great life up until like 7. I was an altar boy, went to church every day with my grandmother. Then fortunately, and I say this fortunately, anybody's listening, I got polio in 1949. I was quarantined and went through this whole thing for 5 years. Jonas Salk's vaccine, I was part of that experiment. And it was a revelation for me, because most kids were playing cowboys and Indians and watching Howdy Doody. I was learning to survive.
You were playing life and death.
Yeah, that's why even like people say, why did you wait 75 years to write this book? Well, first of all, I had to wait for a couple of guys to die so I could talk about it. And then I just feel like, you know, I'm blessed. I have 9 sons, 2 daughters, and 9 grandsons. I have 20 kids, and they're always talking to me, Poppy, give me advice, do this, do that, because they think I'm accomplished. And for coming from my background, most of all our backgrounds, I'm really accomplished. I can't believe it. It's so stupid.
I can't believe they either.
Yeah,
We're
well,
both on TV
that's
right
what I'm
now.
saying.
Going raw background.
It's all right.
Everybody knows Carlo from The Godfather. This is like one of the iconic scenes and iconic characters in Americana from The Godfather.
Sonny can only beat me in the movies, not in real life.
Let's get to that in a minute, but it's a piece of Americana. Tell us about this dinner when they were putting together the cast of The Godfather.
Oh my God, yeah.
You had like a special interaction with Marlon Brando. Tell us what happened there.
Well, I was never an actor, so I didn't realize what protocol is, even in rehearsals. So they send a call sheet out, which tells you what you're going to do tomorrow. And at the end of the call sheet, it says, have no eye contact with Marlon Brando, and do not approach him.
So like any good Staten Islander, you approached him.
No, I didn't. It's even funnier than that. So we're up at 119th Street, which I used to go all the time. It's Patsy's. Fat Tony Salerno had the joint. Okay. So now Francis instructs everybody at the table. He says, All we're going to do is read. There's no acting, but we're going to read in how it goes in sequence in the script. And I want the Italians to exaggerate their mannerisms. And,
That's not odd.
well, not for us it isn't.
Right.
But like he pointed out, Jimmy Connor's Jewish, Marlon Brando's Polish. They have to become Italians. We go to the first break, and Marlon Brando came to me. So I'm saying, okay, I'm then breaking the law. He comes over to me, he says, "You're a big TV actor." I said, "No." He said, "You got a movie coming out." I said, "No." He said, "Well, you're not on Broadway. I know everybody on Broadway." I said, "You're right." He said, "Who'd you study with?" I said, "Study what?" And with this, he calls Francis Ford Coppola over. He says, "Francis, this guy's playing Carlo." And Francis had nothing to do with me playing the part. So he said, "I know," like he was like reluctant.
Pissed off about it.
So I said to him, I don't know protocol. I said, "Francis, go over there a minute. Because this guy's trying to get me fired." I just had
You told Francis Ford Coppola, take a walk.
Yeah, take a walk.
Basically.
Go over there.
Yeah,
man.
go get over
But
there.
I didn't know. Now the whole room calms down. The next sacrilege, I put my arm on Brando because I didn't want to embarrass him. And I walk him to the back where the Ziganet game was. I get him close, face to face. I said, "Let me just tell you something, Mr. Brando. All due respect. You get me fired, I'm going to suck on your heart. You hear me? I will kill you here today. Who the hell are you to kill my opportunity?" He stepped back. He said, "That was brilliant. You could do this part." He thought I was acting. But the guy then, from that point on, was with me every day.
And Marlon Brando
I loved the
took a
guy.
liking
Till
to
he
you.
died, yeah.
You probably helped him with character development, with real
No,
Italianisms.
he helped me.
He helped you.
I was not an actor. I'm the only guy that could say, Marlon Brando was my acting teacher, Frank Sinatra was my singing teacher, and Marilyn Monroe made me a man.
Wow. He's
Three legends.
He's my idol already. I mean, you know. How many presidents have you known?
6 presidents, 3 popes, every world leader you can think of, and some heavyweights like Saddam Hussein, Pablo Escobar. we can go on forever. We can make this a 90-minute special if you want.
You had like a personal relationship with Frank Costello. He's, you know, Frank Costello's kind of known as the prime minister of the underworld.
When you get around people like that and earn their respect, it's amazing.
It's a little
And
scary.
my whole life, when you think of, you know, the 50 years I put in with these people, I don't even understand a life without it.
Tell me a little bit about you and Marilyn Monroe.
I spent time with Marilyn Monroe almost by accident because I got caught by a truant officer on the street because I wasn't in school. They gave me a ticket and they said, "Give it to your mother and father because you have to be in school till you're 16. I was 15 and a half. So I gave the ticket to Frank Costello. So he enrolled me in Wilford Academy on top of Lindy's.
Right.
And I was there just a couple of months, and they were looking for shampoo boys. And they said if I took the job, the last 100 hours of school, I could do it in a salon. The 4th head of hair I washed was Marilyn Monroe's. And the rest of it is history.
Well, can you get into the history? Or?
No, we'll be here for 10 hours. Tell them to have me back. I'll tell you the rest of the story about Marilyn Monroe. The next 4 years before they killed her. And I'll tell you who killed her. How's that?
Okay, this is going to be the most shocking episode yet when we bring back Gianni Russo to tell us who murdered Marilyn Monroe. I want to ask you one last thing. I had dinner with Charles Gasparino last week.
I like Charlie.
I love Charles. I had
Charlie
dinner.
will tell you the story when a guy from Staten Island, I almost killed him and his friend.
Okay, I want to verify this. Charles Gasparino and his brother said that they were at Campagnola and you were with some of the boys and one of his friends got smart
Stupid.
with you.
Stupid.
And when they got smart with you, Joe Watts had to come in and say, "Charlie,
No, we
Stop it.
We told him to go home and get his affairs in order.
this segment is over. Gianni Russo may murder me if I don't
No
cut
way.
this at the end
I don't
right
do
now.
anything like that.
Yeah, I don't do anything like that. Gianni
seriously,
Russo, go out, get the Hollywood Godfather, hear all the details behind all this good stuff. Find out what you have to do from the time you're 7 years old till the time you're 75 years old to look like this mint character right here, because this is a true American story. This is a true New York story.
So that means you're not having me back? What's this now?
We're going to have him back.
Audience, however you get in touch with this guy, make him an offer he can't refuse. I want to come back and talk more. Thank you for the privilege.
Russo will be back on this show anytime he wants. You will be back on this show in 2 minutes after these commercials. Support our sponsors. Don't tune out because of the commercials. We need them, or we're not going to be here, and we're not going to have it back. You're watching What's the Deal? The show that doesn't kneel. And go out and get the Hollywood Godfather book, and we're going to have this guy back anytime he wants. We'll be back right after this. You know, my producer, Frank Morano, does so much work behind the scenes. I just come in the day of the show and everything is prepared, but he's on top of the news, he's on top of the segments, he's on top of all the guests. Frankie, let's go over the news of the week.
And I don't have to tell you how difficult it is to be on top of someone like Johnny Russo. He protested quite a bit. Quite a bit happening this week, John, this past week. Obviously, the big news continues to be the Mueller story. A lot of people view this as a total exoneration of the president. Some people say, maybe don't start popping champagne too quickly. You still have all these congressional investigations. You have all these New York prosecutors. What do you think, politically?
I think it's over. I think it's that simple. Over. 10 count, 2 years, $30 million. We've had Jerome Corsi on. We have had Roger Stone on. And all these people have been telling us no collusion, who are right in the middle of it. And now Mueller says the same. I think it's dead. I don't know. What do you think,
it's
Frank?
so interesting that you mentioned Dr. Corsi, and it's so astute of you. Not only was he a guest on this show, and I realize he's a little wacky, but this is a guy who they wanted to plead guilty to a crime. They handed him a signed plea agreement for him to say, yes, I'm guilty of these crimes. And then when he wouldn't do it, they said, all right, we're going to threaten you with prosecution. So they were willing, these prosecutors were willing to accept a plea agreement from someone that there wasn't even enough evidence to charge with a crime. Now think of how frightening that is, that prosecutors working for you are willing to take a signed declaration of I committed a crime, even though they won't even charge you with a crime. That's pretty frightening in America. So many of the president's defenders are just as full of it as the president's detractors, because all these people for 18 months, all we heard of how horrible Mueller was and how terrible he was. Now that he didn't find any wrongdoing by the president, at least anything criminal, now it's like he's Jesus Christ reincarnate with a West Point degree.
Right. The Dems loved him when he was going after him. The Republicans love him now.
But the fact that his prosecutors were willing to take a plea agreement from someone that they knew because they didn't charge him, that tells you all you need to know about the character of the people that were on this investigation.
What else is happening out there, Frankie? This guy's on top of everything.
We're watching this Jussie Smollett situation. It looked like initially that he was attacked by this band of angry Trump supporters. Then it looked like a hoax that he perpetrated himself, paying these people to masquerade as Trump supporters. Now, the authorities in Illinois, they've dropped all the charges. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I personally think that when he realized what deep he was in, he went back to the two brothers and said, hey, tell them that I paid you for some vitamins and nutrients, and you guys made up the whole story.
2020, the presidential race is heating up. So far, it looks like the only top-tier candidate that hasn't yet jumped in on the Democratic side is Joe Biden. So let's assume this field of 15, 16 candidates remains as it is. Who do you see as the favorite from the get-go? Who's the person that you think will ultimately be the nominee? And if you had to pick a dark horse, somebody that would come out of nowhere to win the nomination that nobody expects, who do you think that would be?
Well, I think the currently in the lead are the two oldest, whitest men in the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, who's not yet announced, and Bernie Sanders. We had Michelle Farley on the show a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten Gillibrand has now announced her candidacy not once, not twice, but 3 different times, twice on comedy shows.
As of this taping, by the time this airs, we have no idea.
As of this taping. But 3 times she's announced her candidacy, and she's still at 0 in the polls. So she's not in my front runner. I think my dark horse team would be Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, either vice and president or president and vice.
On the same ticket, though.
However you look at it, I mean, I think that would be a real, inclusive, progressive ticket that the Democrats, with their new initiatives, would love. And I think on the outside, I have to tell you, this guy, Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, nobody knows how to pronounce his last name.
Who's the mayor of
South Bend,
Indiana, where Notre Dame is. He's a gay, capitalist, liberal, but when you hear him speak, he's kind of talking like regular Americans. And I think he's my dark horse that could come in there and either wind up as a vice presidential candidate or a presidential candidate, because to me, he's just keeping it real.
This was fun. We'll have to do this again.
All right. Well, thank you for that. This week, joining us on What's the Deal to break down the Mueller report, which is the big news of the week, we have Jen Kearns. She's a GOP strategist. She's a contributor to Hill. And also we have Kevin McCullough, nationally syndicated radio host, heard right here on AM 970 The Answer in New York. Thank you for joining us. To me, the news is in. No collusion. None.
Yeah.
It's been a very good week for Trump, and not just because of the Mueller findings, but this week you also saw that the House failed to override his veto on the wall. He's going to build the wall, and Michael Avenatti's been arrested. So you've got, just within the first 2 days of the week, you had like massive victories coming out for the Trump. I think it's going to be a predictive landslide for 2020, actually.
So Jen, it's like a trifecta. Right? We're going to build that wall.
Yep.
There's no collusion. And Michael Avenatti is going to potentially jail because he's allegedly an extortionist.
Which shakes down
kind of all of us thought he was with all of his antics before.
But what kind of moron shakes down Nike?
Well,
you got to be
Reverend
really
Al
stupid.
Sharpton and Jesse Jackson have been shaking down major corporations for decades now. Pepsi Cola, I think they got to boycott or just about boycott NBC and MSNBC many years ago. I believe that's how Sharpton got his position on MSNBC. So this has actually been happening for a while. The problem is Michael Avenatti's a white guy, so it didn't work.
The Mueller probe comes in. No collusion, no chargeable crimes, and they're focusing in on this thing, not exonerated. Prosecutors don't write exoneration letters, do they?
Right, no, they don't. And in fact, look, the Democrats claim falls flat because we know that Robert Mueller is not shy. If he wanted to charge President Trump with something, he would have. And Democrats from the beginning said, if there's a guy to find it, there's a guy with the utmost integrity, Robert Mueller's the guy. So now Democrats have to eat their words a bit. And you look at this, it's not just Mueller's findings. You look at by the numbers, this investigation went very deep. They talked to 500 witnesses, 30 of whom President Trump himself made available from the White House directly. And Mueller put out 2,800 subpoenas. The White House gave up 2 million pages of documents. That's the largest I've ever seen an investigation in American history. And Congress themselves subpoenaed and are reviewing 1 million pages of documents. So you have 3 million pages of documents.
Let's ask a very basic question. If he is without question not guilty of collusion, which the Barr summary quoted the Mueller report verbatim, and Mueller went out of his way to not say that he may have been guilty of collusion, but we couldn't find the evidence to do it. He went out of his way to say there is zero evidence to demonstrate any form of collusion. The Russians they were offering help, they were making overtures, but we can't put anybody on the American side of the equation in contact with them.
Took them up on it.
We don't have anybody that we can identify that made any kind of like connection of the dot to dot. So if he didn't do that, then what investigation was he even possibly obstructing to be able to charge him with collusion on? You're not guilty of collusion.
Yeah.
You can't be guilty of obstruction. It's a great week for Trump.
It's a great week for Trump, and if you ask me, it's a great week for America.
Amen.
Yeah.
Because at some point, you would think that someone would say, hey, you know what? We went up this guy's anal cavity and his family and everyone he knows and 500 and 2,000, why don't we just all come to the table and say, okay, there was no Russian collusion. In the next 2 years, let's do something good like infrastructure. Let's show the American people that the government is working for them.
Let's kill opioids. Let's rebuild our inner cities. Let's get health care taken care of finally. Let's continue to see wages grow and jobs prosper. And let's go kill terrorists but not get involved in wars.
Final note, give me the one thing that Democrats, Republicans, and Independents should do together to make America great again.
Keep the economy exactly where it is. We need that job creation and wage vibrancy happening.
One thing that we could all get together on.
Same thing, but guess what? President Trump has done that despite being under investigation with all those investigations that you just mentioned. For him to have kept America going and to keep the economy strong and get people to their lowest unemployment in 50 years, hey, he's my guy.
Jen, Kevin, we usually have a Democrat, a Republican, and an Independent, but I loaded it up with Republican conservatives because we got to gloat.
Well, it is Newsmax.
Every so often we got to gloat a little bit.
You go.
We're good. You're good. Stay tuned for these commercials. We'll be back right after this. You're watching What's the Deal? The show that doesn't kneel. And now we go to the Legal Eagles. And we talk about the real legal stuff that's happening. And joining us tonight on What's the Deal, Deborah Blum, an experienced litigator. She's a winning trial attorney, admitted to practice through the courts of New York State. And also we have with us Jerry Filipatos, seasoned, versatile New York City employment discrimination attorney, partner at Phillips & Associates. Thank you for joining us on What's the Deal. For over 2 years, the left-wing media has been saying collusion, synergy, all these things, obstruction of justice. Why is the left still decidedly trying to find something wrong with Mueller when they loved him for 2 years?
Well, they have the right to investigate this now themselves. They could take the information that was provided in the 4-page report. They're asking for more information. There are very specific federal rules that govern the release of the information contained in Mueller's report. So it's going to be a question of whether there's a Department of Justice proceeding initiated to get more information and if it's actually released. Information that's contained in Mueller's report, a lot of it is privileged. If people aren't being indicted and charged with crimes, then that information is just subject to some form of confidentiality due to the federal rules. So I think that we're going to see a lot more about this, but if they're saying that there was no collusion, then that really is the answer. And
Jerry,
it's a limited issue.
Jerry, Mueller says no criminal charges, but stop short of exonerating. When have you ever heard a prosecutor write in black and white, they're exonerated?
Well, I think that the left is taking issue with the fact that they don't know what the full report is yet. We have a 4-page report from Attorney General Barr. And there are some things I think that you can legitimately ask questions about still. But there are also some things that I think the left is, should, if they're wise, abandon. Where I think the critics of the Mueller report have some, basis, or of the Barr letter regarding the Mueller report, is on the obstruction side. What Mueller was saying, essentially, and I think this is where I find a little issue with Barr's letter, is that Mueller, as special counsel, I'm not going to make a traditional prosecutor's declination decision where I lay out and say, this is why I would charge, this is the standard, and this is why I'm not going to charge. I'm not going to do that because under the DOJ regs, I can't indict a sitting president. So what's the point of me going through that formal process? All I'm going to do is lay out the facts on either side, and then I'm going to leave it to whoever it is that's going to decide.
I thought we had this panel loaded with people that were all on the same page so we could really rub it in a little bit. So I don't love that point of view, but I'll take it. Just a quick thought. Michael Avenatti, he's allegedly under arrest for extortion.
Mr. Avenatti made a name for himself, really, trying to take it to the president.
I need him put it in the middle of his forehead.
And I'm a plaintiff's attorney. I write claims letters all the time. I write letters to Fortune 500 companies and say, I've been retained by a client and I've done an investigation, and I find that perhaps these
You're in
laws
violation
are
of labor laws.
Right. And here's a draft complaint that I'm probably going to
About to
file in court. But if you want to talk, let's talk.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm with you on that. If he was making these threats on behalf of a client, then it's not necessarily.
Apparently, what he did was two things. First of all, he had a client that really didn't have a claim from everything I read.
So, stalking horse.
Yeah, you have to have a colorable claim in order to go and say to a company, I'm going to sue you for money.
Understood.
And let's negotiate a settlement beforehand. Secondly, he tried to cut a deal independent of the possible claim that he had, where he said to them,
"Pay me, and I'll tell this guy to shut up."
Either you pay me to investigate. Give me $15 million. That must be some kind of investigation.
Right.
And I'll shut this guy.
And I'll
He
shut this
said
guy
that
up.
he would do an internal investigation, an internal audit for Nike, which makes no sense. It's unclear why they would just hire him. He's not being solicited by Nike. You're not allowed to solicit business as an attorney. So you can't go to Nike and say, I want to conduct an investigation for you. You have to hire me. And basically he's saying, I'll release this unless you meet my demands. So I could see how they could possibly make out it. I'm a defense attorney, so I err on the side of wanting to defend people, but I do think that they might have something there to actually have a case of extortion.
Deborah Blum, Jerry Filipatos, thank you very much for joining us. Coming up next in the New Economy segment, Nick Maynard from Elevate Coffee is going to tell you how to elevate your life, your lifestyle, and maybe even start your own business. Get ready to be elevated right after this. Welcome back. Every week we bring you, our audience, the Entrepreneur's Spotlight. We talk to you about the new economy, about business, about innovation, about how you can empower yourself to become part of this new economy. And this week in the Entrepreneur's Spotlight, I have my good friend and very recent entrepreneur, Nick Maynard, joining us. Nick, thank you for being on What's the Deal? And we are talking tonight about Elevate Coffee. Elevate Coffee is an unbelievable blend of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins that gives you your daily dose of energy with a very little dose of caffeine. Nick, tell us about your journey with Elevate as an entrepreneur.
Well, thanks for having me, number one. What happened was I did it to try to honestly prove somebody wrong. And a year and a half later, it's kind of funny.
Did you prove them wrong?
I did not prove them wrong. What happened was a friend of mine, I have worked on Wall Street my whole professional career. And just as I know, kids going to college, you need extra money.
Of course.
It was just something that I could do on the side. And what happened was I tasted this coffee and the capsule. And next thing I knew, in like 15 minutes, I had extra energy. I was focused. And I'm sitting there going, wait a second, if this is happening to me, what could it do to other people?
There are parts of what we're drinking and what we're taking that certainly have an effect mentally, emotionally, and on anxiety right?
We're talking about, especially being down here, it's kind of difficult, but when 9/11 happened, we were down here. I know where I was down the block. And what happened afterwards, coming to work every day,
gives you anxiety.
I just didn't have the right feeling every morning, and it got to the point where I didn't want to be down here. But of course, I have to be down here because
we got to pay for the college,
got to pay for
and
college,
cars, and all those other stuff.
The nice little car we have, or 2 cars we have, or
3 cars we have.
But what happened? I was finding out that the anxiety was still there, but it wasn't as bad as it was. And it's getting to the point where I now go to the memorial, which I go see a very good friend of mine, we're very into our foundation.
Nick is a very active participant in the Bill Machuli Foundation. You can go to friendsofbillmachuli.org and learn about a great guy that both of us were friends with who perished on 9/11. I know you, You're a Wall Street guy. You could smell some bullshit from a mile away. And when you started using this product,
I started feeling a certain way, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was just, I have to say, it was focused. I was focused on what I was doing. In fact, it was getting to the point during the weekends, my wife would hand me a cup of coffee. Next thing you know, I was doing yard work. I don't like doing yard work.
how many people have you brought into the Elevate family and improved their life?
I have personally 185 customers. I have 165 distributors under me, and there's levels to
So when he says distributors, these are people that tried the product, they liked the product, they felt there was something there that was of value to their life, and not only do they want to take it, but they want to go out there and start their own business and tell their friends about all the great things.
Right.
And if you want to know more about Elevate Coffee, you go to baldketo.com, and Nick is going to be there. I mean, this is a hands-on guy. Nick's going to talk to you, and he's going to tell you what he thinks is good about the product. He's going to tell you about his experiences, about how this changed his life from a financial standpoint. It did, right?
Substantially.
We don't.
I'm not
we
saying
don't want to get
anything.
into numbers.
There's
but
no numbers. I started this to pay for my cars. I paid for my daughter's first semester of college, and now I just paid the payment for semester number 2, cash. It was not something I expected. We didn't have to take out a loan for the school. It was
When
just
he says cash, he means check.
Check.
But he didn't do any financing or anything like that. It wasn't actually cash.
no. That was Gianni Russo. That was probably
Yeah, right. Gianni Russo, baby.
Gianni Russo.
Yeah. Things may appear closer in the rearview mirror. These representations may not be representative of everyone's feelings. Nick is not soliciting anyone to invest in sharing services or anything else, but when we do the Entrepreneur Spotlight, we talk about businesses, and I don't just let any schmo come on the show. And I tried the product, and I know Nick, and when I see something that I think is good for our audience, I bring them on, and I want you to hear about it yourself. So when you think about, maybe I want to start a business, maybe I want my life to feel a little better, my anxiety to feel a little less. Maybe I want my dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Elevate. You feel great.
Fantastic.
Your bank account feels even better.
A little better.
You go to baldketo.com. You can email me. My email is right here, jt@tokenteam.com. And I'll put you in touch with Nick personally. And I'm not a paid endorser. I am not only a member, but I'm also the president. And I'm a distributor of Elevate too. But if you want to know the real sensei, go to baldketo.com and talk to Nick. And Nick, thank you very much for coming on the Entrepreneur Spotlight. The Mueller report is in. No collusion. Next week, Roger Stone is going to be back with us, and hopefully Roger's going to get a pardon along with Paul Manafort and our guest from earlier, George Papadopoulos. The left is in Looneyville right now because they can't believe that Mueller found no collusion. We're going to keep our coverage on the left's behavior, which I'm not happy with. And What's the Deal will be back in your living room on your TV next Sunday. We'll see you next week.